Welcome everyone to Jews in Sports with no doubt the biggest interview I have done in my life. We are about to have an incredible experience with Joel Stransky. Before introducing you, short answer to the first question, we go right into it. We all face historical moments in our own lives. You faced maybe one of the biggest moments in history, uniting not only South Africa, but setting a precedent for, how to unite people throughout the whole world and in history. How do we unite a people who are divided?
Sure, Michael. Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me on your chat. Really good to catch up. And thanks for really starting with the toughest question of all, haven't you? You've thrown me right under the bus to start with. It's I think if we had the answer to that question, we would bottle it and we would sell it for gazillions of dollars, and the world would be a really good place to live. But instead, right now we find ourselves in a place that is divided. It's divided by the color of your skin, by the language you speak, by what religion you practice, and ultimately, for me, the overriding factor is that I think we've forgotten to respect everyone else. We so focused on our own space, our own identity, that we've lost respect. And I see it in this country. I see it in South Africa. We have an environment here, and I can only really speak about our environment, that is divided, that has a history of being divided, that was united for a while under Nelson Mandela through sport, not just rugby, but through football and through other sports. And that mechanism to bring people together is not always indefinite. It's not always permanent. It's not always long-lasting. But the crux is that I think if you raise the children of your nation to be respectful, to have values, to respect society and other people's feelings and emotions and positions, then I don't think we'd have this massive divide on a global front. So maybe the simple answer is education, but I'm absolutely no doubt it's more complex than that.
Well, you touched on a lot of important things, but yeah, education, however, why, like with sport, right? You speak about Nelson Mandela was able to do it through sport, and we, through this show, have realized the power of sport. And one of the reasoning, I think, when you talk about education is also experiences. So to have the sport is a very wonderful experience to understand, to respect, to learn, to be with other people and whatnot, and to have that experience rather than just talking about it.
Well, I think there's a whole lot more to that, because in some environments, you almost have to be privileged to receive that education, whether it is experiential or formal schooling, So I do understand where the divide comes.
Okay.
However, it's and again, it's easier said than done. But I just I speak from our communities here in this country. We've kicked apartheid out the door in 1992. We had our first fully democratic election in 1994. 26 years on, we're in the same place. Why? Why is that? Why our education system is weaker than it was? Our infrastructure is weaker. I just can't help thinking that there could, and I'm going to just change tack a little bit before I give you that comment. The world is often divided by the haves and the have-nots. But I think local data or more recent data globally shows that the bulk of the world live in the middle of the haves and the have-nots. More people have access to healthcare, more people have access to education, more people have access to running water and electricity. I think education is probably still the crux there. I think it's about teaching people to socially accept others, to respect society, to respect planet Earth, to respect the human race, the animals, to find a way where we can all live in peace and harmony. Honestly, it can't be that hard, and it doesn't matter which situation you talk about, whether it's in this country, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Israel and Palestine. I mean, it's surely there's got to be some common ground where people can shake hands and say, let's find a way to live together. How hard can that possibly be?
Well, it's hard because you're talking about the respect. I mean, I'm hearing it, right? Respect, that's the word. If you respect each other. however society functions when when we're divided, when we don't respect each other. That's the definition of divided, right? We take away the respect and say, you're different than me, you're different than me, and now we can fight. And so,
but we don't take it away. You and I don't take it away.
right.
The children who are growing up wherever they are in the world don't take it away. There's some plonker who is driving a wedge in there. There's someone who is almost re-educating or trying to get his point across. That is a divide and conquer type narrative. And I think maybe those are the people we need to have this conversation with and understand what do they gain from dividing and conquering.
Welcome to Jews in Sports. I'm your host, Michael Newman. Yes, that's me. I competed on LeBron James' show $1 Million Mile on CBS, where I go on to win $25,000 while wearing my yarmulke, inspiring people around the country and creating moments like this. And so I created my foundation, where we take kids with physical challenges through an actual live Spartan race, not only changing their lives, but the lives of the volunteers. I am an elite pro Spartan racer, appearing on many podiums, and am currently training for Season 4 of Israel Ninja Warrior. This is my podcast, delving into life's biggest questions from the perspective of our Jewish athlete heroes. Created to inspire and empower, please enjoy our program.
Let's introduce who you are, because by the way,
Please, can we talk about sport or something a little more enlightening?
No, not on this show. This show we go deep right away, and we go and we continue. Nothing fun here. Go for a comedy show if you need to, go have fun. Again, that's the point. We try to delve into life's biggest questions from the perspective of our athletes and our heroes, because the athletes are the ones that, have these skills to, work out every day. We eat well every day, self-control, mentally pick ourselves up every single day. So that's the perspective we want in these questions. Okay, you are a legend. You are written in history. The reasoning of that is because you were not only just a part of the Nelson Mandela team in 1995, the rugby, World Championship that united the country. If you were just on the team, it would be amazing to talk to you. But you were, for the American understanding, the LeBron James of the team, scoring.
I like that. Carry on.
Hey, it's true though, right? For everyone also, rugby is a huge sport in South Africa. Thus why the LeBron James comparison is very good, because that is how people probably perceive you in South Africa and around the world. That rugby is popular all around the world except the US. Anyway,
it's growing in the US. Yeah,
it's growing. And again, I'm a huge sports fan, so I heard of you when I was in the rugby, uniting the country when I was younger. But if I only knew you were Jewish, I would say that it would put Sandy, not that we're competing, but put Sandy Koufax to shame, because the historic, implication that you have in this world is wonderful because of that moment. And we'll show it right now. The winning drop goal in the second extra time. I mean, you cannot set it up for a better movie ending, which it becomes. But against New Zealand, an incredible historical moment. Just the feeling, the goosebumps I get of that drop-winning goal kick is incredible.
Stransky back in the pocket, has the chance to drop the goal. Back it comes to Stransky. Up goes the kick. Up goes the walls. Stransky has kept his head. And with 2 minutes gone in the second period of extra time, South Africa's Van der Westhuizen, a little knock forward. But that's it. South Africa have won the World Cup.
Coming back from that moment, again, I think people now can have a better understanding of what that moment was like. So what we can get into now is, knowing who you are, knowing the implications. Nelson Mandela's, team, Cinderella's story. You guys were not supposed to win, not supposed to go that far. You score everything in that game. You led the team. Invictus, the movie. I think it's powerful that that you're in it. It's crazy and such. What was that as a human being? And then also that specific drop kick. What were you thinking? What went through your mind?
So those are two very different questions. I'll answer them very separately. So let's start with Invictus. So I look at it and I think if we went back to 1995, even after the World Cup final, when we'd won the final, we'd had this huge ticker tape parade and this massive celebration. And if you'd said to us then, as a group of little rugby players from this little country at the tip of Africa, and said, hold on, guys, in a few years' time, Clint Eastwood's going to come here and make a movie about you guys. Matt Damon's going to, be in the film, and you have these mega stars. Morgan Freeman's going to play Madiba, and it's going to be a massive hit globally. How do you feel about that? We would have said, "Oh, you smoking your socks? It's never going to happen." So the fact that it happened is just unbelievable. For us, it was just something like out of our wildest dreams. To actually then have met Morgan Freeman and Matt Damon and Clint Eastwood and had dinner with him was incredible. And Scott Eastwood as well, who played me. It was sensational, special times. But again, I'll come back to what I said a little bit earlier. The rugby scenes were not the greatest part of the movie, but the background story about Nelson Mandela and his wisdom and his deep thought process and how he used a sports team, a predominantly white sports team. We have one black player in our team, to bring a nation together and unite around a group of men running onto the field to do battle against the arch enemy, and the All Blacks are our arch enemy. Just sensational, just the most incredible story and completely inspiring, and that was really testament to Madiba, the great leader, probably the greatest leader this planet has ever seen. And we all, he's still our ultimate hero. He's still our non-playing captain of every sports team, and he's still a man we look up to with great admiration.
In the
and
moment,
then the drop goal, the drop goal was just part of part of my job on the field. Some players, it's their job to carry it up and catch it and drive it and scrum and throw it in at the line out. It's the
don't do this to me that you didn't feel pressure. When I as a kid pretending that I'm hitting
the last pressure.
When I as a kid pretending that I'm hitting the last championship basketball imaginary basketball shot, I feel pressure. An imaginary game as a kid. Come on.
So yes, I mean I grew up in a house of playing sport, and when we missed that final kick, there was always a bit of extra time, and there was a chance to have another go, and we always won. That's the joys of being a kid. And I think it was Michael Jordan who said, he failed, I don't know how many thousand times in order to succeed at the end. And he made every shot that really counted. And I think it comes down to hard work and the hours and hours, the 1,000 hours of practice, whatever it is. And I think once you work that hard at something and you have that professional attitude, all it does is it not only smooths the process of the kick or the throw or the jump, whatever it is, but it instills an unbelievable self-belief inside you, and not just in the forefront of your mind, but in the subconscious, which I think is what drives the forefront of your mind. And I think if you have that self-belief, you don't consider the consequences of failure or of missing, because you only believe in one thing, and that's succeeding. And I didn't feel any pressure going for that kick. It was probably for two reasons. One is I do have an ability to block out the pressure. And two, a drop goal is, it's in the field of play. There's no time to stop and think about it. It's not like a place kick or teeing it up, to hit a putt to win the US Open at golf. It is in the heart of the action where there's no time to really consider what's going on. It was a special moment for us, and one that lives with us forever, lives with me forever.
Let's get into a couple of things where we can go anywhere from here, and that is, obviously being divided and how to unite people. I do want to get into what apartheid is like. You said obviously some of those things haven't changed. We talked about at the beginning that there is obviously a benefit to keeping people divided, whoever those people are, whether the regimes, companies, obviously there's a benefit, because it's unnatural for us to be divided, because again, we all have the same respect for each other, And then also the Israel comparison to apartheid, you know, from your experience, whether that is, you know, accurate, what we can, you know, true or not. Anyway, so I mean, I guess we can start quickly just from the apartheid experience, and then we can, if you're comfortable, obviously going into, I think, a topic that people are very concerned about, Israel being called an apartheid state, and kind of, you know, South Africa gets thrown under the bus a little bit when we talk about apartheid, because Israel is the example and not South Africa.
Yeah, so maybe let's start with growing up in an apartheid regime, and I think it is important to understand that when we were kids, you know, we grew up in that, we were educated, indoctrinated by our parents, the system, to understand that to be the norm. You know, that was the norm for us, and we didn't really know any better. You know what children are like. You play games, you play sport, you go to school, you learn, and you know, you go home and do homework, and you know, you don't really fully understand what life is all about, and it's very easy post that in retrospect to look back and think, you know, how blind were we? You know, how come we didn't understand it fully? But the reality is we weren't exposed to it. We didn't experience it. We weren't educated about it. We just, you know, went to school and played sport and did our thing. And I'd even go a step further to say that in 1995, we as rugby players probably didn't understand the full impact of a Rugby World Cup on our shores, in our country, the importance of the event taking place as a starting point, the importance of us doing well in the event, the importance of us making the final, and the importance of us winning the final. And really the value you only realize in years afterwards, you know, once you look back and realize what was achieved in that period. And again, to be fair, not so much by us on the field. You know, we went out and played the game we just loved, and we wanted to compete and be the best in the world. But what happened behind the scenes, what was driven by Nelson Mandela, the great Nelson Mandela, and I'll come back to him.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes to unite a nation, he came to see us before the opening game. He flew in his helicopter, and he said, you know, I will make sure that this whole country supports this team, even if you're 100% white. It's a national team on our national home soil, and as much as some people, you know, don't like that, I will make sure you get the full support. And he did, and he saw us again before the final, and he was hugely supportive. He wore the Springbok shirt, which was this real emblem of a divided nation, of apartheid. And to see on match day of the Rugby World Cup final in 1995, 60,000 fans, of which probably, I don't know, 50,000 were old school Afrikaner rugby fans chanting his name, Madiba, Madiba, Madiba. I mean, that just tells a story in itself. You know? And this journey of sport uniting a nation continued for us as South Africans into 1996, where the football side won the African Cup of Nations. And again, sport played a major role to bring us all together. Unfortunately, it wasn't long-lived because the regime changed and Madiba got old, and I think greed and power and politics got, you know, the better of us. And once again, we became a nation divided by many different elements. I wanted to just touch on Madiba himself, because I think it's important that we all understand what an incredible man he was. You know, if you watch that film, you alluded to it earlier, Invictus, the story of the rugby was pretty average, and the play and everything was really poor. But the story of Madiba was sensational. You know, to understand what happened behind the scenes, to see him interacting with his bodyguards, and one of his head of his bodyguards, Rory Stain, is a good friend of mine. To hear those stories, just absolutely, you know, amazing. So much so, and you'll notice my head is shaved at the moment, and I started a charity which is really devoted to growing the wishes of Nelson Mandela. His wish was to educate this nation. He always maintained that to change a nation, you need to educate the kids, and that actually education should be the cornerstone and will be the cornerstone of the future. And for us in my charity, we try and focus on educating the underprivileged children. We give them education and we give them hope. You know, that's our mantra. I think my head is shaved because I have family and friends who've at the moment are suffering from cancer, and we have this annual cancer shave-a-thon, and it doesn't happen this time of year, but because I've three people very close to me in my life who are very ill. I thought I'd shave my head for charity. I don't normally look like a convict, but
so sorry.
to your no, it's the story of life, And
yeah.
but the point is, and coming back to Madiba, the point is that he instilled in us, in many of us, in most of us, not just in this country, around the whole world, a compassion, a unity, a desire to live together in peace, and I can't help thinking that what always divides is some form of struggle for power or greed, and it can be nothing else, because if you take away power, if you take away greed, then everyone would live together in harmony. There can be no other driving factor. There's no way that anyone of us who's remotely sane thinks that human beings are different in their makeup. I mean, how can we be? So it's a very sensitive thing. In this country, we are still quite divided. I think we've come a long way. We have a long way to go still, and I think when I look around the rest of the world, the problems that the rest of the world is experiencing, it's things we live with on a daily basis. It's some of the state of affairs are very, very sad.
It's so interesting, again, with power, in a sense, we easily forget in history, right? We were so quick to forget.
and to chuck it away, by the way, because we don't just forget, we try and discard the history we don't like. And history is what defines us, who we are, our paths right now, whether we like it or not. It is the lessons to be learned.
I have a question for you, because Nelson Mandela is obviously bigger than life figure, but Nelson Mandela was very simple in his sense that he was, he, as you said, he went down to being a human being, right? Not to take away his greatness, but at the end of the day, he just tried to feel as a human being and feel how others felt, which is a very simple thing for all of us to do every day. How can we embody that Nelson Mandela trait of just like hearing the other side, feeling the other side, being empathetic, and not give into the power that we all go through every day. We all want.
Yeah. Well, I think, so I mean, I had the great privilege of spending a bit of time with Nelson Mandela, and my wife and I went to his house and had lunch with him, and just him and us and another couple, 5 of us around his dining room table, a normal Sunday lunch. And we spent 3 or 4 hours there just chatting, and getting to understand the deep values of the man, the values that makes him who he is and what he was, forgiving and kind, and just this real special human being. I think we're in a different place in the world right now. I think it's very hard to compare Madiba to people of this modern generation. I think social media and instant gratification and the way we live with knowledge at our fingertips and data at our fingertips, I think makes this world a very, very different place. And I think, again, it comes down to the value system, educational system. Yeah. Kids, and my charity, we've started another campaign. We, aside from purely the educational side, we test the eyesight of kids. We give glasses to those who need glasses. We've now tried to involve ourselves with in a campaign where we help young men, young boys who grow up in a home without a father, because I think, again, that value system doesn't always come through from a father passing down the values of being a man, a gentleman, and a nurturer and a mentor in a household, and I think that is missing. But again, it's just a whole another world that the kids are growing up in today. And I see what my 19-year-old son is flipping, can't stop dialing my number. I've told him I'm not available and he's still phoning. But that sort of sums it up, doesn't it? Yeah. He wants to talk to me now. His needs much more important. He's 19, he's got a phone. I must answer his call. And I think in many ways that sums up the youth of today, the environment our kids are growing up in, the environment in which we live.
So I'm a psychologist, right? And I definitely say that to parents, that there has to be a boundary, right? Whatever the boundary you want to set, because kids are so, attached and reliant on the parents. But yes, social media, right? Depression goes up 20%. When we're on it. And the information now with big data that we're being sent, talk about the divide. Those people, who thrive off of that, or whatever system thrives off that, knows how to feed you now the same information that you want to hear to keep you divided.
Yeah.
Funny question, kind of weird. How would Nelson Mandela do if he came into power during social media age?
He certainly wouldn't do it the Donald Trump way, that's for sure. I don't know. So I think he was such a forgiving man and such a kind man, and with such a deep and knowledgeable EQ and understanding of people. I think he would have handled things very differently. I'm not sure social media would have been his thing, actually. I think his thing would have been to sit down face to face and have a conversation, and for you to look in his eyes and see the kindness and the wisdom, and from that gather on how you need to manage a situation.
You talk about conversation, but obviously real conversation. I think when you talk about social media, right, it strips away the real conversation, where it's not even fast paced, but take away the emotion of it, and that's the problem with, as we said, disregarding, as you said, not only disregarding history, right, in the sense of also making it history. We strip away the emotional attachment to what that history represented. The Holocaust, right? It's being now seen as a regular historical event, right? There's no emotional attachment, and when you don't have that, you can't have that conversation. You can't see Mandela express to you his feeling and his kindness. So apartheid obviously was a very dangerous concept. Growing up with apartheid in a place where, right, it was forced division, very clear-cut forced division. Do you want to touch upon, in a simple way, of Israel? And when, again, we're going to say there's faults in a country. We can't say there's no faults, as there's not perfect. But this comparison from apartheid in Israel to apartheid in South Africa.
So firstly, I just want to comment on something you said there about inhibitions and stripping away the emotion, because there are two factors there that I would like to include in that element. I mean, the first thing is the fact that social media and the fact that whether it is Twitter or even a phone call or a video conference like this, less so a video conference, because we can still look each other in the eye to some extent. But I think the fact that social media strips away the emotion and takes away a lot of inhibition means we become a lot more aggressive by nature. And I think the aggression builds resentment and builds some other animal that actually metamorphosizes in some way into violence at some point. And I think we live in a very aggressive society, particularly here in this country. And I can say that, especially in this country, we've become very aggressive in our nature. And maybe it's a defensive mechanism, maybe it's our coping mechanism, I'm not 100% sure, but that's the environment that we live in.
Well, don't go to the Israel thing yet, because you hit an incredible point. I spoke with, Boyd Melson's a friend of mine. You were talking about, why is everyone so angry and whatnot? It's such a brilliant point that, like, it's, again, we're not taking me in other times that there wasn't violence and anger and such, but it just feels like it comes more natural now, right? We talk about the protesters, the looters in America, right? It just feels like people, obviously criticize them, but the feeling is, okay, you're speaking to such a societal change because we don't have the human connection, the experiences that we've now taken that human experience and turned it into a very aggressive thing going back. It's brilliant.
And there's no consequence. So, that's the other thing that you need to understand. If you say something bad or you make an aggressive comment on social media or even on this platform, there's no consequence. It's not like I can jump through the screen and knock you out, or you're going to get arrested for it, or anything can happen. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah.
And I think that carries through into society now, which is maybe why peaceful protests, whether in the US or in this country, become violent, become about looting and stealing and theft and burning and destroying. Not because it's going to help matters, but because it's easy to do, because it's And because in the minds of people who are doing that, there's no consequence. If someone did that and did get locked up and went away for 2 or 3 years for stealing Nike shoes or burning a Mercedes or looting a bottle store in this country, it would be a different story. People wouldn't do it. But the reality is the consequences are almost no longer there, because when the masses are doing it, you can't find those people and lock them up. That's the reality.
Good point.
I wanted to touch on something else, which it's now slipped my mind. I think it was about history, actually. I think it was, this is the other thing I wanted to say. And you mentioned the emotion around the Holocaust. And I guess, and I don't want to play the Holocaust down. I would like to say that up front. But the other side of me also says we can't live in history. We have to move forward. We can't keep on dragging it up, whether it is the Holocaust, whether it's apartheid, whether it's the slavery in the US, whether it is the Roman Empire, or the barbarians 300 BC. I don't know, the dinosaur era. Where do you draw the line? We can't live in the past. If you're going to say we got to chuck the past away, and Israel and Palestine, whatever it is an apartheid regime, and where do you draw the line in the past? Is it in 1966? Is it in 1939? Is it in 10 BC? I just think we have to say, the world is where it's at. We need to move forward. How do we move forward? How do we get people in the Middle East to live in peace and harmony? How do we get people in the US to live? Because I can tell you right now, if you're going to hop on Israel, someone's going to bring up, well, no one belongs in the US. Give it all back to the Red Indians and everyone else, bugger off. So where do you draw the line? I don't think you can ever go and say, well, for me, it suits me to draw the line in 1995. Someone else can have a different point of view. It's just a ludicrous argument. I think the way to look at the world is to say, how do we find a way to move forward?
It's to unpack this a little bit, because this is actually a tough one where it gets lost, because we said earlier, right? History is an important thing, right? We do have to look at history. And then I guess, and then we say, obviously we lose the emotion of history. But I think I want to actually say this. It's not losing the emotion of the history, but it's transferring, I think, to your point, the emotion of that history into not only the future, but into yourself. And I think it comes from a place of fear. We all sit in this and we all go, why we say, no, this guy, and no, give it back to the Americans. It's a trickle-down effect in the argument where you're saying we should move forward. And to do that is you have to say this happened, but we're proud of ourselves. I think right now, is the world going to hell? It feels that way, but people are living normal lives. Right? People don't, people say, oh, the world's not falling apart is an argument. But I do want to say that people are living in fear, whether they're recognizing it now. We're highest depression rate in the US. You feel this fear, whether it's, we've always had fear. And I think to your point is we're living in that fear. We're living in the, where do we draw the line? In Israel, you can always bring up, as it compared to apartheid, and move forward. Look for a solution. Be proud of who you are. Don't let those people divide you, put you in fear. And you're speaking really to a solution of how to get over being divided, which is don't live in the past. Don't be tied to the past. Be tied to the future. Move forward. Keep moving. In your matches in your rugby team, if you're playing a rugby match, right, in the World Championship, in one of the biggest moments in history, do you stay tied on the mistake that you made? No, because you'd be screwed. Every athlete knows that. If you stay on the mistake you made, you have to say, okay, I screwed up now, I have to go do something else for my team. I don't know if you want to comment on that point, but it's a brilliant point that people need to understand.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, you can't learn from the past. I think, and to your point, you've got to put the past behind, you've got to learn from it, you've got to make sure you're a better version. And maybe there's a little lesson. So here's a rugby lesson for you. And it is something that I think some teams, other rugby teams do, but the Springboks do this consciously. And I think, and maybe the All Blacks in their own way have a very similar culture, and I think both the All Blacks and the Springboks learn from each other. But the Springboks have a culture, and it started many years ago. And they say, when you become a Springbok and you are the incumbent number 10 or number 1 or number 15, whatever number you are, whatever position you play, when you are given that jersey, it is on loan. You are not the full-time wearer of, I wore the number 10 shirt. You're not the full-time wearer of the number 10 jersey. It is on loan to you. You need to work your socks off, be the best possible player you can be, to honor those who've been before you and make it a better place for those who come after you. And I think there's something about that, isn't there? It's about understanding what there was before. It's about building on that foundation. It's about honoring those who deserve to be honored. I think there are some people in the past who don't deserve to be honored. They were bad, bastard people that maybe are those people in history who we don't want to learn from, or we shouldn't learn from, or we don't want to. But certainly we can learn maybe how not to do things from them. So there's always a lesson to be learned. But I think the crux there is that we should look at life and the world and our positions and say, for our children and our children's children, we need to make this a better place. And it's easy to pay lip service to it, but it really is something we should focus on. We are here for a short time, and the people who come after us will suffer the consequences of our actions and the actions of those who came before us. We need to make sure that whoever comes after us, this place is a better place. And I think sometimes it's a tough decision. It's because we all want to make decisions for today, not necessarily for tomorrow. But I think if we all focused a little bit more on the future and not on the past, it would be a better place to be right now.
I want to end it there with that message because I feel so good from that message. It embodies a lot of Judaism, especially the religion side. This world, this life, the jersey, the comparison, the jersey, this body's on loan. What you
100%.
And I want to end it there because that's going to be hopefully an inspiration and good feel for people to go back into the day and into the world. The legend itself.
I must say, I have not had a really deep conversation like this for a while, and it's I'm still in the office here. It's nearly 5 o'clock, and my son's phoning to say, "Where are you?" Because my wife's with her parents in Durban because they're ill. But it is actually very thought-provoking and quite reflective to have a deep conversation, to realize not just what we do on a daily basis, not what drives us, but also what should be driving us. And I thank you for that. It's nice to have a deep conversation.